Moment when you realize your career just got torpedoed by someone who wasn't even born when you started working? That's exactly what happened to me last Tuesday morning. The conference room on the 38th floor of TechFlow Solutions smelled like fresh coffee and impending disaster. I'm Pierce Richardson, 54 years old, and I'd been navigating corporate politics longer than our new director of innovation had been alive. I was standing by the window reviewing the final integration protocols on my tablet when the door burst open like someone was raiding the place. Jordan Wells strutted in, 26 years old, Stanford MBA still warm from the printer, and wearing that smug expression kids get when daddy hands them the keys to the kingdom. It was his second week on the job, literally his 10th day, and he was already swinging his weight around like he owned the building. Pierce, his voice cut through the morning quiet like nails on a chalkboard. He wasn't looking at the city view. He was looking at me like I was some relic from the Stone Age. I lowered my tablet slowly, giving him the same neutral expression I used for difficult clients. "Morning, Jordan. Ready for the Blackstone presentation?" "That's exactly what I wanted to discuss," he said, holding up a thick folder. It was our standard operating procedures manual, minus the one nobody had cracked open since Obama was president. "I've been reviewing our client management protocols, and frankly, Pierce, what I'm seeing is concerning." I blinked. Here I was, 48 hours away from closing a $1.2 billion federal IT integration contract, and this kid was worried about protocols. "I'm sorry, which protocols specifically?" He flipped open the manual like he was revealing state secrets. Section 4.2 clearly outlines standardized digital communication channels for all client interactions. Yet according to my analysis, 73% of your correspondence with government liaisons happens through direct phone calls and in-person meetings. The room had gone dead silent. The junior analysts in the glass cubicles outside had stopped typing. Project coordinators were frozen mid-sip of their morning coffee. This was the part where I usually tell people that if you enjoy watching corporate train wrecks in slow motion, you should probably stick around because the crash is coming fast. "Jordan," I said, my voice dropping to that calm tone I learned from 25 years of dealing with impossible deadlines and impossible people. "I'm meeting with Howard Blackstone in 48 hours to finalize a $1.2 billion integration project. Direct communication isn't the problem. The problem is your questioning methods that have worked for over 2 decades. His face went red, clashing with his expensive tie. He wasn't used to pushback. He was used to professors and terrified interns nodding along to whatever buzzword salad he was serving. "I am the director of innovation," he announced, throwing around a title I knew his father Richard Wells had created just for him. "I'm implementing efficiency standards. If you can't adapt to modern workflow automation, how can we trust you with the company's digital future?" It was so ridiculous I almost laughed, but I saw that gleam in his eye. He didn't care about efficiency standards. He wanted a scalp. He wanted to prove on day 10 that he was the new sheriff in town. He'd picked me because I looked established, and taking down the veteran is the fastest way to scare everyone else in line. Go digital, Pierce. Use the automated client management system. Stop wasting time with these antiquated face-to-face meetings, he commanded, crossing his arms. Write a formal transition plan showing how you'll modernize your approach. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the tremor in his hands, the desperate need to prove himself. I also saw the complete lack of understanding about what I actually did for this company. "No," I said simply. "I have work to do." I turned back to my tablet. "You're terminated," he shrieked. The words hung in the air like a bad joke. I turned around. He was breathing hard, eyes wide. He'd committed. He'd pulled the trigger. "You can't be serious," I said, not pleading, just analyzing the situation. "I am your superior by organizational hierarchy, and you are demonstrating resistance to digital transformation initiatives," he yelled, his voice cracking. "Pack your things. HR will process your termination immediately." I looked at the terrified faces of the analysts outside the glass. I looked at the $1.2 billion contract details on my tablet, and then something cold and clear washed over me. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt relieved. "All right," I said. Jordan blinked, expecting a fight, expecting begging. "You're absolutely right, Jordan. Efficiency is important. I'll pack my things right now." I didn't wait for his response. I walked past him, shoulder brushing his, and headed for my office. He thought he'd just flexed his authority. He had no idea he'd just fired the only person in the building who could explain the handshake agreements with federal security directors. My office was organized chaos, stacks of project files, legal pads with shorthand only I could decipher, and sitting in the corner, my old Rolodex. Jordan probably thought everything lived in the cloud. He didn't understand that in government contracting, real deals happen on secure phone lines with people who've worked together for decades. I didn't rush. Rushing suggests panic, and I wasn't panicking. I opened my drawers with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this dance before. First, personal items, the photo of my kids from their college graduation. The crystal paperweight Howard Blackstone gave me after we closed the Defense Department modernization project. Then the Rolodex. I picked it up, feeling its weight. 25 years of direct contacts, personal cell numbers, secure communication protocols. I dropped it into my briefcase. It landed with a satisfying thud. My assistant Rachel was hovering in the doorway, looking like she'd seen a ghost. "Pierce," she whispered. "Is it true? Did he actually fire you?" "It's true, Rachel," I said, keeping my voice steady. I picked up the preliminary files for the Blackstone integration. Technically, these belong to the company. I set them back down on my desk, right in the center. But the meeting is Thursday. Nobody else knows the security clearance requirements. Nobody else has the relationship history. "I'm sure Jordan is very capable," I said, and the lie tasted like medicine. "He has that MBA from Stanford. He understands modern efficiency." I cleared my browser history, logged out of the secure government portal, wiped my local cache. I wasn't destroying company property. I was removing my personal access footprints. If they wanted to navigate this deal, they'd have to do it with whatever was in the filing cabinets. When I walked out of my office, the entire floor was pretending to work while watching the drama unfold. It was the kind of silence you get when everyone knows the captain just got thrown overboard by someone who can't read a compass. Jordan was waiting by the elevators with two uncomfortable security guards who'd known me for 15 years. "Make sure he doesn't take any proprietary information," Jordan snapped. Charlie Brooks, head of floor security, looked at me apologetically. He'd worked late nights with me on government compliance reviews. "He's clean, Mr. Wells," Charlie said without even checking my briefcase. "Fine, just get him out. I want this resistance to innovation off my floor," Jordan huffed. I stopped at the elevator and pressed the button. When the doors opened, I turned to Jordan one last time. He was bracing for a curse out, a threat, a "you'll regret this" speech. Instead, I smiled. It was genuine, the kind of smile you give someone who just handed you a lottery ticket while thinking they're writing you a speeding fine. "Thanks, Jordan," I said. His eyebrows shot up, confusion cracking his mask of authority. "What? For clarifying where this company's priorities lie. It's been educational." I stepped into the elevator. "Good luck with the Blackstone meeting. The security clearance requirements are tricky." "What security requirements?" he demanded, stepping forward as the doors started closing. "Everything's in the digital files. Digital files don't have security clearances," I said softly. The door slid shut, cutting off his face just as the panic started creeping in. As the elevator descended, I checked my watch. 10:30 a.m. By noon, someone would start asking questions about Thursday's meeting. By 2 p.m., they'd realize Jordan couldn't access the classified components. By tomorrow morning, the bleeding would start. I walked out into the bright morning sunshine and didn't look back. Instead of catching a cab, I walked 4 blocks to a quiet diner, ordered black coffee, and sat by the window. I pulled out my phone and turned it off. Let them sit in the silence for a while. I spent the afternoon at the museum, looking at exhibits about American innovation. It was funny how much perspective you gained when you weren't carrying the weight of corporate deadlines on your shoulders. For the first time in months, I actually read the plaques, noticed the details, enjoyed the quiet. It wasn't until 6 p.m., when I was back home with a cold beer, that I turned my phone back on. The thing buzzed in my hand like an angry wasp for 2 solid minutes. 14 missed calls from the office, 6 from HR, 3 from unknown numbers, and 31 new emails. I took a sip of beer and scrolled through the text messages. Rachel, 11:45 a.m., Pierce, legal is asking who authorized your termination. Jordan is locked in his office. Rachel, 1:30 p.m. Howard Blackstone's office called looking for you. Jordan took the call. It didn't go well. Lot of confused shouting about security protocols. Rachel, 3:15 p.m. Where are the clearance files? Jordan is freaking out, says they should be on the server. Pierce. Everyone's panicking. I smiled, taking another sip. Of course, they weren't on the server. Security clearances aren't documents you can download. They're relationships, built over years of working with the same people, earning their trust, understanding their requirements. They were in the handshake agreements I'd made with Howard about maintaining operational security. They were in the personal assurances about data handling that I'd given to federal IT directors over the past quarter century. I opened an email from Paul Henderson, our CFO. Subject line: You Argent, employment status, misunderstanding. Pierce, there appears to be a significant communication breakdown regarding procedural compliance. Please call immediately. We need to discuss contract continuation before the Thursday meeting. Jordan may have been overzealous in his efficiency initiatives. Let's resolve this professionally. Overzealous efficiency initiatives. That's corporate speak for the kids screwed up big time. I didn't reply. I could picture the scene perfectly. The sun setting over the office, casting long shadows across the floor. Jordan would be exhausted, his confidence evaporating as he realized that Director of Innovation was a title that commanded fear, but not knowledge. He had the files. He could see the $1.2 billion valuation, but he didn't know why Howard Blackstone specifically requested personal briefings instead of digital presentations. He didn't know that federal security protocols required face-to-face verification for certain classified integrations. If he tried to automate those interactions, he'd insult Howard so deeply that the contract would be dead before the opening handshake. Another text came through from an unknown number, Howard Blackstone's direct line. Pierce, call me. We need to discuss Thursday's security requirements. Your replacement doesn't have clearance. I looked at that message for a long time. My replacement doesn't have clearance. In government contracting, security clearance isn't something you can fake or delegate. It's earned through years of background checks, relationship building, and demonstrated reliability. Jordan could have all the digital files in the world, but without the personal trust factor, he was just another vendor trying to sell something to the federal government. I set the phone face down on the coffee table. I wasn't going to save them. Not tonight. Tonight, I was going to watch the game and think about what came next. Maybe something about underdogs. Maybe something about experience beating arrogance. The panic was quiet from my living room, but I knew that by morning it would be screaming loud enough to wake the dead. There's a specific file cabinet in my home office that stays locked. It doesn't contain money or jewelry. It contains leverage. I walked over and pulled out a small key from my desk drawer. The lock clicked with mechanical satisfaction. Inside was a leather portfolio containing direct contact information for every federal IT director I'd worked with over the past 25 years. These weren't business cards or LinkedIn connections. These were personal cell numbers, secure communication protocols, the kind of relationships you build over decades of delivering results when everyone else was making excuses. Most people thought TechFlow hired me because of my resume. The truth was, I came with the client relationships. Howard Blackstone and I had worked together since his first promotion to federal IT oversight. He trusted me because I'd never let him down, never oversold a capability, never left him hanging when technical problems arose. I opened the portfolio and found Howard's card, not his office number, his personal line, the one he answered himself. Calling this number would breach every non-disclosure agreement in my old employment contract. It was career suicide at TechFlow. But then I remembered Jordan's face, the way he dismissed 25 years of relationship building as inefficient. I picked up my phone and dialed. It rang twice. This is Howard. Howard, it's Pierce Richardson. There was a pause, a shift in tone. Pierce, I thought we were in quiet period until Thursday's briefing. We were, I said, keeping my voice steady. But the parameters have changed. Changed how? The warmth drained from his voice, replaced by the steel of a man who'd survived 3 different federal administrations. I've been terminated. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Terminated, he repeated, like the word was foreign. By whom? The new director of innovation, Jordan Wells. Failure to embrace digital transformation initiatives. Digital transformation, Howard said flatly. And who's handling the security clearance transitions? Nobody, I said. Jordan believes the automated systems can handle federal compliance. I heard what might have been a laugh or a growl. The automated systems don't have security clearances, Pierce. Without personal verification protocols, this entire integration violates federal IT security standards. That appears to be the situation. So they fired the only person with active clearance 48 hours before our biggest integration briefing. That's bold. Efficient, according to the director of innovation. Howard was quiet for a moment. Pierce, are you free for breakfast tomorrow? Unemployed. Howard, I'm free all week. Good, meet me at the Capitol Grill, 8 a.m. And Pierce, don't sign anything with TechFlow. Not a severance package, not a consulting agreement. Nothing. Wouldn't dream of it. I hung up and sat back in my chair. My heart was pounding with the steady rhythm of anticipation. I'd just crossed a line there was no coming back from. I wasn't just a terminated employee anymore. I was about to become the competition. The Capitol Grill serves breakfast with the kind of quiet efficiency that makes you feel like you're planning something important, which we were. Howard Blackstone looked exactly like he always did. Navy suit, silver hair, eyes that had seen every type of corporate disaster and was impressed by none of them. They called my office yesterday, Howard said, cutting his omelet with surgical precision. Young man named Jordan Wells, very enthusiastic. Oh, I sipped my coffee. He assured me that you were transitioning to a senior advisory role and had fully briefed him on all security requirements. Howard paused, amusement flickering in his eyes. He seemed very confident that digital workflows would streamline our entire process. I set my cup down. The audacity was breathtaking. It wasn't just a lie, it was a dangerous, verifiable lie. If I was transitioning roles, federal protocols required notification. If I was terminated, the security implications had to be addressed immediately. He's trying to buy time, I said, hoping he can charm his way through the technical briefings. He thinks I'm just another client, Howard corrected. He doesn't understand that federal contracts aren't about charm. They're about capability and trust. Howard wiped his mouth with a linen napkin. Here's the situation, Pierce. I don't work with companies that can't maintain security protocols, and I certainly don't work with people who lie to federal oversight. The TechFlow contract is dead. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick document. But I still need that integration project completed, and I still trust you to run it. It wasn't a job application. It was a consulting contract with Blackstone Federal Solutions. The retainer was double my old salary. The project fee was substantial, and the first assignment was to complete the integration project TechFlow could no longer handle. There's just one condition, Howard added, his expression shifting to something that might have been satisfaction. I haven't canceled the Thursday meeting yet. Why not? Because I want to see Jordan's face when he tries to explain federal security compliance to someone who actually understands it. I want to watch him realize that Stanford didn't teach him everything he needed to know. Want me to attend the meeting? God, no. Howard shook his head. I want you in the lobby coffee shop across the street. I want you to be the last thing he sees before his career implodes. My phone buzzed with an automated alert. My TechFlow system access had been officially revoked, but then a second alert, this one from the Wall Street Journal. TechFlow shares tumble on federal contract concerns as key executive exits. The leak had started. The sharks were circling. I accept, I said, picking up the pen. Good, Howard said. Now finish your eggs. Watching corporate meltdowns is exhausting work. Thursday morning arrived gray and threatening rain. Matching what I imagined was the mood on TechFlow's 38th floor. I sat in the corner booth of the coffee shop directly across from their building. Dennis Cooper, Howard's chief of staff, sat across from me with a stack of onboarding documents for my new consulting role. Mr. Blackstone is en route, Dennis said, checking his watch. He asked me to ensure you were visible. Visible? Dennis gestured toward the glass tower across the street. To the building, I looked up. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of TechFlow's lobby, I could see a figure in a dark suit pacing near the security desk. Jordan Wells, trying to ensure everything was perfect for Howard's arrival. He wanted to look like the competent professional, the guy in control. Then he stopped. He looked out the window, scanning the street. His gaze locked onto the coffee shop. The distance was maybe 50 yards, but I saw him freeze. He saw me. More importantly, he saw Dennis Cooper. Everyone in federal contracting knew Dennis. He was Howard Blackstone's right hand. Jordan pressed his face against the glass. His mouth opened. He grabbed his phone and started dialing frantically. My phone stayed silent. I'd blocked his number Tuesday night. He sees us, I said, taking a sip of coffee. Excellent. Dennis said without turning around. Panic makes people sloppy, and Mr. Blackstone hates sloppy. I watched Jordan's meltdown in real time. He spun around, pointing at us through the window, likely screaming at the receptionist about corporate espionage. The poor woman just shook her head, looking terrified. Jordan ran toward the elevators, probably racing back upstairs to warn. Well? Warn whom? Richard Wells? The board? What could he say? The guy I fired is having coffee with our client's chief of staff. It was an admission of catastrophic failure. There's our cue, Dennis said as a black sedan pulled up to TechFlow's entrance. Howard Blackstone stepped out, buttoned his jacket, and looked up at the building like a demolition expert examining a condemned structure. He walked straight into the lobby without looking our way. I waited exactly 10 minutes, then paid for the coffee. It was time to go say hello. The lobby of TechFlow was designed to intimidate marble floors, a waterfall feature, and acoustics that amplified every footstep. I pushed through the revolving doors and the sound washed over me. Howard Blackstone stood in the center of the atrium, not moving toward the elevators, just standing like a statue. Jordan was there, slightly disheveled, his expensive suit looking less power player and more desperate intern. He was flanked by Paul Henderson and the general counsel, both looking like they wanted to disappear into the marble floor. I walked quietly across the marble, my footsteps echoing. I stopped about 20 feet away, close enough to hear, far enough to watch the show unfold. Unforeseen complications, Jordan was saying, his voice shrill and bouncing off the hard surfaces. But as I mentioned, Pierce is transitioning to an advisory role. He's temporarily unavailable, but I'm fully briefed on all requirements. Howard stared at him without blinking. Transitioning, he repeated, his voice carrying across the marble. To what role exactly? Senior advisory consultant. Jordan nodded vigorously. Very sudden promotion, but he briefed me comprehensively on all security protocols. Howard reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen once. That's interesting, he said, because I just received a text from him. He says the coffee across the street was excellent. Jordan froze. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like he'd seen a ghost. Henderson's head snapped up. What? Howard turned slightly, his eyes finding me across the lobby. He didn't smile, just gave a slight nod. Jordan spun around and saw me standing there, healthy, calm, holding my briefcase. The transitioning advisor who was supposed to be in high-level meetings. The silence that followed could have crushed steel. He, Jordan stammered, pointing a shaking finger at me. He's supposed to be. I terminated him. The truth exploded out of him before he could stop it. Henderson turned on Jordan, his eyes bulging. You did what? Howard looked back at Jordan with pure disgust. You told my staff he was promoted. You lied to federal oversight about security personnel, and you terminated the project lead 48 hours before our briefing 4. He looked me up and down for what, exactly? Digital transformation resistance? Jordan shrieked, desperate and cornered. He refused to modernize his client management approach. It's all documented in our efficiency protocols. Howard laughed, a dry, harsh sound that echoed off the marble. You fired the architect of a $1.2 billion integration project for preferring phone calls to chatbots. He turned to Henderson. Is this the competency I'm contracting with? Is this the judgment my tax dollars are buying? Mr. Blackstone, please. Henderson stepped forward, hands raised like he was approaching a wild animal. This is a misunderstanding. Jordan he's new. We can bring Pierce back immediately. Full reinstatement, bonus promotion. Howard raised his hand. No, he turned to me. Pierce, are you currently employed by TechFlow Solutions? I stepped forward, feeling the weight of 25 years of professional relationships behind me. No, Mr. Blackstone. My employment was terminated for cause Tuesday morning. Then there's no one here with authority to manage this project. Howard signaled to Dennis, who was standing by the door. The briefing is canceled. Find me a contractor who understands federal security requirements. You can't. Jordan screamed, his voice cracking. My father will sue. We have a signed preliminary agreement. Preliminary agreements require good faith compliance. Howard said, ice cold, you've demonstrated neither good faith nor compliance. He turned and walked toward the exit. Good day, gentlemen. The moment those revolving doors stopped spinning, the lobby exploded. Henderson, who'd survived 3 hostile takeovers and a federal audit, turned on Jordan with a face like a ripe tomato. You fired him, Henderson roared, his voice bouncing off the marble like thunder. You fired our federal liaison without consulting legal. without consulting the board, without understanding what the hell he actually did. He was resistant to innovation. Jordan cried, backing against the security desk. He was inefficient. He was blocking digital transformation. He was our security clearance, Henderson shouted, spittle flying. He was our relationship with every federal IT director on the East Coast. He was $1.2 billion walking out that door. I stood there, an observer to the carnage. Jordan looked around desperately for support, his eyes landing on me. The hate was still there, but mixed with the terrifying realization that he'd blown up his own career in 10 days flat. "This is your fault," he screamed at me. "You planned this. You sabotaged us. I planned to wear khakis and a button down," I said calmly. "You planned everything else, Jordan." Henderson spun toward me, desperation replacing anger. "Pierce, please, ignore him. He's suspended, effective immediately. Come back. Senior VP. 40% raise, stock options. Just call Howard back. Fix this." I looked at Henderson. I'd worked with him for 15 years. He'd never once asked about my family, never said thank you when I saved a quarterly report with smart negotiating. He only cared now because the ship was sinking and he needed someone who knew how to swim. "Can't do that, Paul," I said. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a cream-colored folder. "What's that?" Henderson asked, his voice barely a whisper. "My new consulting contract," I said. "Signed this morning. With whom?" Henderson's voice cracked like a teenager's. "The client," I said. "Blackstone Federal Solutions. I'm the lead consultant for federal IT integration projects." The realization hit Henderson like a physical blow. He staggered backward, grabbing the security desk for support. You're working for Howard. As of 8 a.m. this morning, I'm managing the integration project TechFlow can no longer handle. I checked my watch, but not today. Today I'm going home to read the project specifications. This briefcase has new possibilities. I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard Henderson shouting into his phone, calling lawyers, calling board members, calling anyone who might fix the unfixable, but the damage was done. The relationship was dead. 3 days later, TechFlow's stock had dropped 19%. The business press was running stories about management chaos and failed federal contracts. In a desperate attempt to stop the bleeding, the board begged Howard Blackstone for one final meeting. They promised that obstacles had been removed, that new leadership was in place. Howard agreed on one condition. The entire executive team, including Jordan and his father, Richard Wells, had to attend a formal review meeting. The boardroom was packed and the air conditioning was running full blast, but everyone was sweating. Jordan sat at the far end of the table in a different suit, looking smaller somehow. His father, Richard, wouldn't make eye contact with him. The doors opened. Howard walked in, followed by Dennis, then me. I entered last, wearing a new Navy suit with a Blackstone Federal Solutions consultant badge. The collective gasp was audible. Jordan's head snapped up, his eyes going wide with something between recognition and terror. "We understood," the CEO began, his voice shaking, "that this meeting was to discuss contract reinstatement." Howard sat down at the head of the table without opening his briefcase. "I'm not here to discuss reinstatement. I'm here to offer you a subcontractor role at 25 cents on the dollar." 25 cents? Henderson shouted. "That's highway robbery. The contract was worth $1. "That was when you had qualified personnel," Howard said calmly. "That was when you had Pierce. Now you have," he gestured toward Jordan, "digital transformation initiatives." The room turned to look at me. The betrayal in their eyes was palpable. They'd expected loyalty from someone they discarded like outdated equipment. "Pierce," Jordan whispered, his voice breaking. "How could you do this? You worked here for 25 years. I looked at him without anger, without hate. Just with the calm assessment of someone who'd learned an expensive lesson about respect and competence. "I did work here for 25 years, I said. And for 25 years, I built relationships, earned trust, delivered results. You decided that wasn't efficient enough." Richard Wells spoke up, his voice heavy with defeat. "We can fix this. Come back, Pierce. We'll terminate Jordan, give you his position. Just tell Howard to honor the original contract." The room held its breath. This was it. The offer of complete vindication, the crown handed to the rightful king. I looked at Howard, who raised an eyebrow waiting. "Ready to resume the contract?" he asked, playing along perfectly. I looked at the CEO, at Henderson, at Richard Wells, and finally at Jordan. I smiled, not with malice, but with the satisfaction of someone who knows exactly how the game ends. "Sorry," I said softly, my voice echoing in the silent room. He fired me for being inefficient. No deal. Howard stood up. "You heard the man. The offer is 25 cents on the dollar. You have until 5 p.m. to accept, or we'll wait for the bankruptcy proceedings and buy your assets for pennies." He turned and walked out. I followed, not looking back. As the elevator doors closed, Howard handed me a project folder. "Welcome to federal contracting, Pierce. Try not to let success go to your head." I took the folder and smiled. "Thanks, Howard. I'll do my best to stay efficient." For the first time in 25 years, I didn't check my reflection to see if my tie was straight. I knew it was perfect. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who's been quietly building relationships while everyone else was building their resume. In business, firing someone isn't just about losing an employee. It's about losing everything they know, everyone they know, and every bridge they've built.